I just wanted to talk about the solar system stuff that I have been working on since we're kind of splitting this idea up. These splines are just this trajectory spline component or this blueprint, and it's nothing more than the spline. I think, let's see, it doesn't have any variables or anything. It's just a spline, and you can drag the points off however you want. So I just made some weird circles. These spline riders are the planets, and I've replaced them, both of these ideas, with what I'm trying to do with the new one, or what I was trying to do. But you would take this eyedropper and say, which is the spline that I'm following? It's just an instantly or instance editable variable, so you just pick whichever one, and whenever you go over one, it's like, okay, click that, and then it'll circle on that orbit. And the way it does that is that this is from whenever we had that little demo scene where Near like crashes onto Eros, that little preview from the first semester. So it says whatever your spline is, use this timeline and set how long you want it to take, and set whether you want it to keep going in circles or just go around that loop once, and set where you want to start on it, and move from point to point along it as you update this 5 second, and that's where you change it. It's 5 seconds default, but you can change it to 30 or however many you want. Um, and you want it to move along there on every tick or whatever, however fast this timeline checks. You set its location, its rotation. Um, and this is one of the things to replace with real data. And since you're setting this with real data every time, what I was trying to do with the new one, this Solar System Map 1, is replace those spline riders with the space body. And you can see there's one named after each of the planets in Pluto, which is still a planet forever. And it's got basically the same data. You can have this dropper thing, even though it doesn't exist anymore. So I basically duplicated them and added new things. And the big thing was this orbit data, which is just a series of vectors for the location. And that's the same difference for us as that spline. Each of those points on that spline is just a vector. And these things are what we are going to use Julie's SPICE data to populate where they actually are in relation to the sun as the center. And so that sun, I put at 0, 0, 0 as the origin. These would be at those points all around it. Moving around these points across that duration is how I was creating the orbit. Obviously, you don't have to. It's just what I was doing for anyone that is working on it. So this messed up for me. I couldn't get it to work quite right, and I think it has more to do with the task that Dakota's got set right now, where it's moving properly in 3D space. So I was building an array from these locations and telling it where the start and the stop are, and that would mean like level 5, we want to stop between point 4 and point 5, because that's this slice of time we want to show. That's that start and stop. Um, and so for each of the pieces of the orbit data, I'm going to build that spline array, and I'm going to start it from the first to the last. And I think there's logic that says if you don't specify them, or however it works, like there's a way to set it to where it's a slice, and then there's a way to have it automatically loop all the way around. Um, and the idea was to recreate this logic from that last thing. You can see the actor location and everything. But again, I never got it going. The solar system map, the regular one, works with all of this, moving along that predetermined spline. What I was trying to do with this one was move along a spline, quote unquote, that we make up with those points. Um, anyway, I'd like to see what everyone's trying, making this to work otherwise. And I just wanted to show where I was at with what I had made in case there's something that we can use. But I thought for the planets and for Near and Eros and any object that we want to have, we would have a space body. That space body would have location coordinates. Let me pull up this space body info is part of, I think that's a struct, which would be under data. So we've got space body date info struct, and then a regular info struct. So this one, I think it's got a camera, so every space body would have a camera. I don't know if we can incorporate that into the work that we just got done with the different cameras for the solar system. And okay, each of these dates is its own kind of struct, and then whether or not it's looping or moving right now. so that if it wasn't moving, you could have it like be a snapshot freeze frame kind of thing. So the other struct was the date, and on each date, and I talked to Julie a little bit about this, we can add whatever variables we want, but on each date, we would need at least the location. I don't think we need to worry too much about the rotation and the velocity, because if we know how long Jupiter takes to go around the sun, we can create a scale and say if it's like 3 Earth years or whatever, we can divide that by however many points or whatever rate, and it will go around in like an equivalent rate to that. Obviously, we don't want it to take 3 years to go around, maybe 20 seconds. So we'd find a scale like that and apply that same factor to all of the planets so that they all match up with their rotation time. So I don't think velocity is too important. Rotation, I just don't think that we're going to, um, I don't know, maybe we can get that in relation to the sun, but I didn't figure that out. But then location is just those 3 points relation to the sun, plug them in for every date. So uh, is just like a date time object. We would have as many as we want or as few as we want. I figure, say everything is sitting at 0, 0 right now, they'll jump to those positions as the array is built, but they're all just in that same location. But I figure if we try to mimic that map from here, the original solar system one, um, you can see that there's only like a dozen points or whatever, and it moved in a fairly circular fashion. It wasn't all funky, um, and like angly, jolty. So if we just have about this many dates pulled from Spice, specifically our key dates, and then any in between ones to smooth it out. Like if there's not a key date from here to here, then we would add a couple. That's the kind of data I wanted to see added into those space body info, which is made up of those date structs. And seriously, like if someone else is working on putting this together, please talk to me if you're willing, and we can figure out any details that are confusing. Or maybe you can catch me up to date if you have a different approach that you're doing with it. Thanks.